Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
I'm Bob. Lee. Will. Larry. Sammy. Peter. Steve. Jim. Buzz. George. Clint. Bob. James.
Snake.
George. Jack. Richard. Howard. Amanda. Jack. Eric.
You. Go for it.
Okay, Jeff.
D.
John.
And you are?
Nicholas.
Hi, Nicholas. And I'm Diana.
Okay, Diana Elrod is from the Soka Gakkai International, and to talk, I think you can see his earthly desires are enlightenment.
Thank you. How many people have been here when I've been here at the same time? A lot of you look familiar. There's the Georges, and then there's the Steves and the Peters collection. So a lot of you. Get your hands again. Show me again. So, oh, good. Well, hello to you new faces, and hello again to you old faces. Basically, I wanted to give a very brief introduction of what our practice is primarily about. I mean, it's difficult, as you probably know, to characterize a Buddhist practice in 10 words or less. But we practice a form of Buddhism called Nichiren Buddhism. Nichiren was a 13th century Japanese monk and reformer of Buddhism who principally is known for bringing Nam Myoho Renge Kyo as a mantra that we chant, which Myoho Renge Kyo is basically the title of the Lotus Sutra upon which his teachings are based. And this was a practice that's really characterized by being accessible to anyone, and people of lowly status in 13th century Japan could become enlightened through this practice, and by consequence all of us. And what our principal practice is based on is we recite a portion of the Lotus Sutra both morning and evening, as well as chant as much Nam Myoho Renge Kyo as we can fit in. People have always enjoyed, and if it's okay, we'd like to chant with you again, share with you. And this time I think those of you who've seen me before we passed around the miniature version of a Gohonzon, which is our mandala, basically. It's this scroll here. And I thought we should bring the real deal. So this is the loner Gohonzon from our community center over on 17th and Potrero. But this is basically what all practitioners have in their homes, is a scroll like this, which down the center says Nam Myoho Renge Kyo Nichiren. And it includes all basically the functions of life, both positive and negative, on the scroll. And don't ask me specifics because I don't read it, but I kind of vaguely know what's on there. But the purpose of it is really, it's a focus for our practice. Some people refer to it as a mirror because it reflects the sort of completely self-actualized person that we all are as a Buddha. And so we chant to this every day, and both morning and evening, as I said. And I have actually little books for those of you who are game to try to follow. I don't know. I'll pass these around. If you're, you might have to share. There aren't that many of them. We're gonna do this lightning speed. But when we chant the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo part, we'll slow it down so you can join in if you feel like it. We'll chant about 5 minutes. The part that we recite in the morning and evening is from page 1 to page 5, and then from page 27 to 38. And then I'm going to do the silent prayers and all 5 of them, because we're going to do this as if this were the morning prayer. Are you cool with that? Y'all cool? Huh? I'm going to lead Gongyo, don't worry.
Okay.
Dee was worried that she was going to lead Gongyo. I'm leading Gongyo, so that's okay. Don't feel obligated to try to keep up, because you won't be able to probably. Nam-myo ho-renge kyo, Nam-myo ho-renge kyo, Nam-myo ho-renge kyo. Yo-ho-renge kyo, ho-ben pandai ni ji sa san ju samai anjo ni ki go shari asu shobuchi e chinjin mario kochi amanange nani wi sa shomon yogachi buddha bono ji chowi shaga shingan yakasen ma nakamushu sho buta jingo sho buta mario toho yum yo sho jin yo sho fuma joju jin yin mi so uo sui gi sho sirvi shu nange shaya to joju jo buta yura chu du inen hiyoko en gong yo mushu ho ben yun yo shu jo ryo wi sho jiga chowi shaga nyorai ho ben jigen haramitsukai ku sakashari atsu nyorai jigen gorai jinan murio muge rigimu sho isan joke rasamai sajo dui sai miso ho shari atsu nyorai no shoujo fum murio shisho ho ganji nu and akachu jin jaya to yo ganji murio mu and miso ho busu jido ji shari atsu busu busu to shobi shaya judai chike yo nange shi o yui butu yo butu nai no gu jin jo ho ji so showi sho ho no say so no say show no say tai no say riki no say san no say yin no say yen no say ga no say ho no say han ma gu gyo do showi sho no say so no say tai no say riki no say san no say yin no say yen no say ga no say ho no say han ma gu gyo do showi sho no say so no say show no say tai no say riki no say san no say yin no say ga no say ho no say han ma gu gyo do yo ringe yo nyora jiryo hanna jirgiti ga jakabara shaka shaka shamario yakasan ma yakasaya sogi joseph gyoge kashu jara ni yo buddha ni rai mario go ino shujo go ho ben yen ne ani to the buddha dojo juji sabo ga doju ochi joten to riki roten no judo sui gani bugen middle koku yo shari gen kai ren moni shoga go chi jojo gi shin Nani Shinyo Gamma the Buji, Shinyo Jiga Gishu Soka Shiryo Jusenga Jigo Shujo Josai Jibu Madawi Oben Ringo Ganu with the boom at the Yoko Shujo Uoki Chui Setamojo Honyo Dofu Manchi Tani Gana Jodoga Genjo Shujo Kutsusayo Kugai Gobo Igan Jin Yogo Shokirigo Ingo Shinren Mo Nai Chidui Sabo Jinzu Rikino Seyo Waso Gigo Jusen Gyo Shouju Joju Gengo Jikai Ga Jojo Jiga Shito Nintini Joju Manan Rin Jojo Gakachujo Shogun Hotu Take Ga Shujo Shoyu Rika Shoten Yukatengu Josa Shugi Kaku Manarage Gaishu Ga Jodo Fuki Nishu Genjo Dino Shogun No Sei Chidu Mansei Shota Jujo Akago Inen Ka Sugi Go Fumatamo Nyoshu Shugu Gunu Wash Kaishin Saishin Yisabu Bokaju Jeta Sedabada Mario Kunai Kenbushai Sedabada Nanchi Gaji Rikinyo Sayako Shomario Jumyo Mushu Gogo Shugo Shok Chisha Moto Chisho Gito Ranyo Yoji Medigo Jibugo Nyo Isano Beni Jio Shigo Chitsusai Ganchi Muno Seiko Muga Yui Sebu Bambu Tendo Chitsusai Gan Metui Joken Gago Nisho Yoshi Shin Ho It's a Jakigo Yakata O Akado Juga Joji Jodo Gyodo Bugyodo Surio Shogado Shuju Ho Mighty Sasen Gario Shudo Tokano Mojodo Soka Jibushi Nam yo ho ringe go, 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 nam yo Ho renge kyo 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 ho renge kyo nam yo 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 ho renge kyo ho renge kyo nam yo 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 ho renge kyo yo ho renge kyo nam 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 yo ho renge kyo ho renge kyo nam yo 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 ho renge kyo yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo ho renge kyo nam yo 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 ho renge kyo yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo ho renge kyo nam yo 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 ho renge kyo. Thank you very, very much. So I brought with me and us a little packet of information that I thought would be of interest to you, and I just wanted to quickly tell you what's in it. Nichiren Daishonin, the body of his works is really letters primarily that he wrote to his followers, where he discussed the meaning of Buddhism and in terms of daily life, and how individuals, no matter what station they are in life could overcome their suffering and become eternally happy. On the third page or so, there's a thing that says earthly desires are enlightenment, and this was specifically a letter he wrote to one of his followers that discusses the concept that we're going to share a little bit about today. Following that are some experiences and some words from our national general director of our organization. We're a lay organization. We're not connected with a priesthood. There's another experience from B.B. Potts. These are all primarily gay-related. I thought that'd be interesting. Another short article on earthly desires are enlightenment, taking control of our lives. And then in the back, there's an article here on the Dragon Girl, which is talking about the parable, which I'm going to refer to, about the Dragon King's daughter, which is very interesting, very unique, very progressive kind of parable that was found in the Lotus Sutra that is talked about a lot in Nichiren Daishonin's writings. A little bit about our organization. And then on the last page, I just happened across this Tricycle magazine, which never, ever, ever writes about the SGI. Well, that's not true. Never, ever, ever. Had on their back page this month, I was so excited about our second president of our organization, Josei Toda, who was imprisoned along with his mentor and the first president of our organization during World War II as thought criminals because they refused to accept the government authority of the state-imposed religion. So I included that because I was so encouraged, number one, just to see it in a national publication, but also just because it really gets at kind of what is a bodhisattva from our point of view in a daily life kind of way. I wanted to share just a little bit. I always have to say this. I'm not a scholar of Buddhism, and although I study a lot, I really come from a place of personal experience. And so what I am about to share with you is my own personal understanding of this Buddhist concept of earthly desires or enlightenment, but your results may vary. I don't know. A kind of a similar topic or a related topic is enlightenment as we are. What does it mean to be enlightened as we are? The Lotus Sutra, which was the next to the last, Jeff, help me, next to the last sutra? Yeah. It was the next to the last. That Shakyamuni Buddha is said to have written or spoken. It was unique in a number of respects, including it described the ability of all beings, not just human beings, but all beings, including women, to obtain enlightenment or to become enlightened or to reveal enlightenment. And by extension, that meant everybody, including you and me and the whole world. And one of the most profound stories in the Lotus Sutra, in my opinion, is the Dragon King's daughter, which for me as a lesbian really captures how I feel about why I practice Buddhism. And the story is the Dragon King's daughter, who was at the age of 8, was able to become enlightened in her present form, which was a reptile. It was not only a female, it was a female reptile. The point being that anyone or anything can become enlightened, that it didn't require years or eons or whatever of austerities. It didn't require to be a certain station in life. You didn't need to be a man. And a lot of other pre-Lotus Sutra teachings talked about needing to be a man, needing to be reborn as a man in order to become enlightened. So what I personally get from this is if one is able to become enlightened in one's present form, then it follows that whatever happens in my daily life in my present form is potentially fodder for that enlightenment. And that's kind of how I think a lot of people who practice this Buddhism have come to understand this term of enlightenment as we are, and earthly desires are enlightenment. A comment about what is enlightenment. In my opinion, it's sort of awakening to that which already exists within. It's not it's not an end product. It's not like you work it really hard and then you get the bingo, you get the prize of enlightenment and then everything is hunky-dory, because it's never that way. Nichiren taught his followers that ordinary people like you and me had that Buddha nature, had that potentiality within them to reveal the deepest, most wise, most compassionate part of themselves that could allow them to weather whatever horrible external experiences they might have. 13th century Japan was not a fun place, I don't think, from what I understand. It was kind of a lot of privation, a lot of suffering, a lot of hunger. There was a lot of famine. There were wars. There was invasions. There was, weather catastrophes, etc. So it wasn't a really good time to live. And what Nichiren taught was basically you could be enlightened now, even with all this crap going on around you. A similar concept that I wanted to share with you it's not similar, but it's related to this, is the concept of the 10 worlds. Has anybody heard of this concept? The 10 worlds: hell, hunger, animality, blah, 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 rapture, learning, realization, bodhisattva, Buddhahood. I think I skipped one, but you know what I mean. It's this sort of, the lower worlds are kind of like, the sort of...
You skipped humans.
Oh, I forgot. The lower worlds are sort of like where I find myself a lot, like hell, hunger, animality, anger, rapture, in love. She's going to speak on rapture. And the concept of the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, though, is that this process of going from, increasing or improving our life condition towards Buddhahood is not a linear process, that it's fraught with circularity or whatever. It's, a little bit of this and a little of that. And someone once described to me that our practice of Buddhism as Nichiren Buddhist is really to raise the set point, if you will, from where I start at, because I'm a very angry person, and to move up a few notches, and you keep moving yourself up in sort of, so that the place that you tend to rest at is somewhere higher than when you started, theoretically. However, this kind of Buddhism talks about that there is Buddhahood in hell and hell in Buddhahood, that they're not mutually exclusive. In fact, they mutually possess one another. So when we're seeking nirvana or we're seeking Buddhahood, that we're not really seeking an end state, but seeking a place where actually we are able to use Buddhahood, this sort of enlightened self, within our hellish state, our suffering state. We don't rid ourselves of suffering because suffering is being human. So the hell of our daily life, the way I understand it, is basically our enlightenment when we're able to employ it in a way that increases our power to do good, to be compassionate, to we talk about turning poison into medicine, basically using these experiences in life for something better than simply just resolving that problem. So when we're chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, ultimately what we're trying to do is to activate this potentiality within us so that we can, the more I chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the more I feel like, I get sued by somebody, and it's like, well, that's really disturbing and I'm upset, but it doesn't kill my self-esteem. It doesn't stop me dead in my tracks. I still have a mission to fulfill, and it's that kind of, I think that's the process that a lot of us go through when we chant. So when Nichiren Daishonin says earthly desires are enlightenment, he meant that basically that these desires, these human functions, these sufferings that we have as people are really the vehicle for us to express the innate Buddhahood. It's not something that you can rid yourself of, because that would mean being not human anymore, but that you employ them into something bigger and better. This has a great, profound meaning for me as a lesbian, because not simply because I can be enlightened as a lesbian, but all the things that I experience in life as a lesbian, as a human being in general, but specifically as being gay, is, the sufferings that I've experienced in terms of discrimination, of abuse that I've experienced in my past. All these things can be actually causes for my happiness. And I think that gets me out of victimhood into some more self-empowered state. So that's kind of, we're going to have plenty of time for you to have questions, but I know that Dee and Joma both wanted to share a little bit about their own experience from practicing this Buddhism and how they've used it to overcome their own suffering. You want to go first? Sure. Okay. Here. Dee Trichet from the East Bay. All the way from the East Bay.
If you don't mind, I typed it, so I'll read it, okay? Otherwise, I'll blabble.
Is that a word?
Blabble, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I recently, last year, we had a GLBT conference in Florida where a lot of Buddhists from around the country come together. We study, we chant, we share experiences, and I shared it last year. So I'd like to share it with you today. This past March, I celebrated 20 years of practicing Nichiren Buddhism. Since I began practicing, what I noticed right away was how my life seemed to be in rhythm. I was always at the right place at the right time to get the things I was chanting for. I thought it was a coincidence for about the first 6 months of my practice, but 20 years later, my life is still in rhythm, even more so. I can only attribute it to chanting, since being in rhythm is what my life lacked before I started. 2001 and 2002 were extremely challenging, to say the least, for me. I had major obstacles with my finances, career, I didn't have one, housing, and with my health. I've dealt with some pretty big obstacles over the years, but not all at one time and so drastic. I felt extremely overwhelmed and confused. Because of carpal tunnel syndrome and related surgeries, I've been off work since 1998. I received a large settlement from the work-related injury, and with that money, I planned to buy a loft, which was a dream of mine, and live off my workers' comp disability money until I was able to return to work. Then the housing market in the Bay Area went crazy. Over in Oakland, it went crazy. The apartment building where I had been renting for 4 years was sold, and we had to move. I found another place, but it was nowhere near as nice as where I had been living, and the rent was more than double. The money I was receiving did not cover my monthly bills, so I had to start dipping into my loft savings. Due to the disability I had with the carpal tunnel, I had the opportunity to change my career through a vocational rehabilitation program from the airline industry to property management. I knew because of the housing market this was a wise career move. For a year, I looked for work in my new field but had no luck. I was really down and depressed, even though I was chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo a lot. I made the determination to uproot the cause of this suffering and become really happy. Meanwhile, my savings was slowly depleting and I couldn't pull myself out of the funk I was in. A friend told me about an affordable housing complex. This would cut my rent drastically. At the initial interview, I was informed that they had had over 400 applicants for only 38 units, and that I was number 32 on the waiting list. Around the same time, I went to the doctor for a routine checkup. My doctor found a lump in my breast. She immediately scheduled a mammogram, during which a suspicious mass was found. I was scared to death. I only told a few members and friends because I didn't want anyone to worry. While dealing emotionally with the possibility of cancer, I pursued the affordable housing project. I was told the complex was for artists and entrepreneurs first, and I should look elsewhere. I was so discouraged, but I kept chanting. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo had always worked. I always won. Even if I didn't get that apartment, something better would happen. A week later, I called again and was told I had moved up to number 6 on the list. Again, I sat down and chanted. The little devils in my head were telling me, you'll never get it. Don't even bother calling back. Start looking somewhere else. I persevered and I called anyway the next week. I was number 1. I got really excited. A friend shared some guidance with me that helped me focus my prayer while I was chanting. Whatever we are thinking in front of the Gohonzon, which is the scroll, is the direction we will go in. Our challenge is to dream of results as big as the power of the Gohonzon, which has no limit. With this attitude of faith, we can tap the infinite power of the Gohonzon in the depth of our lives and create a future of joy, gratitude, and victory. I pray to release the chains of doubt and fear clouding my mind of faith, and for unbounded confidence and courage to win and joyfully step into my bright future. SGI President Ikeda has said, when your determination changes, everything will begin to move in the direction you desire. The The moment you resolve to be victorious, every nerve and fiber in your being will immediately orient itself toward your success. On the other hand, if you think this is never going to work out, then at that instant, every cell in your being will be deflated and give up the fight. Then everything will move in the direction of failure. The biopsy came back. The lump was cancer. I sat in front of the Gohonzon and I cried and I cried and cried. Surgery was scheduled to remove the lump, and then more surgery was needed to find out if the cancer had spread. Calls started coming in from all over the country to encourage me, even though I hadn't told many people. I was so down and depressed because I knew that ultimately I had to deal with it alone. Chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo and taking care of my members gave me the strength to keep moving. I called the affordable housing complex again after chanting about 2 hours. The guy told me to come right over. A 2-bedroom had just become available. I chanted with appreciation for the breakthrough. While chanting, I decided to ask if I could get the rent even lower. After my request, the man I spoke with hesitated for what seemed like an eternity. I guess he thought I had lost my mind. He finally replied that he would rent me the unit for much less, but only if I would volunteer to work for him 2 to 3 days a week in property management. He didn't even know that was my background. I moved in February 1st, 2002, and it is a brand new loft. Coincidence? I think not. I had the fortune to attract the most wonderful and compassionate doctors to help me through the process of breast cancer. I've never before had a major illness, and I needed to understand more deeply why this was happening, especially as it did right after the September 11th tragedy. I started to chant 3 hours a day. An SGI leader from Chicago called me. That's where I'm from. She is someone who had helped me in my early practice and whom I trusted with my life. She shared some more guidance from President Ikeda, who said that a person who has a serious illness, it can awaken his or her true humanity. She encouraged me to strengthen my life force in order to create a tremendous victory. Her words stirred something in me. After her call, I chanted to understand. I understood intellectually, but I needed to understand on a deeper level. As I was chanting, I realized it was not about all the obstacles I was experiencing. It was about my prayer to uproot the cause of my suffering. It was about how I can and will become the most happiest Black, gay, Buddhist woman and help many others do the same. Happiness comes as a result of how we respond to deep suffering. My hardships provided me with the opportunity to bring forth my true, confident self and not let all those little negative voices and doubt win. Think of being underwater. The desire to reach the surface is so strong that you kick with all your might. If you just float along the surface, the struggle is not the same kick. When you struggle for your life, it awakens conviction inside, and that conviction to live, to thrive, to make each moment count is what turns on the Buddha nature within. My practice and understanding had evolved to a new and deeper level. That was the true benefit. I no longer felt like a victim and was ready to confront my cancer. The surgery was successful, and doctors later found no trace of cancer left in my body. I declined chemotherapy but completed 8 weeks of radiation treatments May 2002, and my prognosis is great. Suffer what there is to suffer, enjoy what there is to enjoy, writes Nichiren Daishonin. Regard both suffering and joy as facts of life and continue chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo no matter what happens. How could this be anything other than the boundless joy of the law? Strengthen your power of faith more than ever. Through my experience, I'm determined to never give up and to use Nam-myoho Renge Kyo in every aspect of my life forever. Thank you so much to my SGI members who supported me with their prayer, who read me guidance when I didn't feel like listening, who went with me for the surgeries, who explained medical terms to me, who are the most wonderful people in the world, my Buddhist family. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me come over also. Diana asked me to also come and share my experience with Buddhism and with earthly desires equals enlightenment. So I thought I could maybe begin with just giving you a background of my own experience with Buddhism and how chanting has helped me in my life, and then maybe just share with you my own personal take on the idea of earthly desire equals enlightenment. So basically, I have also experience that I wrote down, and I'll read part of it and just speak off the cuff part of it, just to give you an idea of where I'm coming from. So my name is Jomo Thorne. I'm 28 years old, and I've been practicing Nichiren Buddhism with the SGI for 15 years. I live in San Francisco, California, and work as a network administrator and office manager at a nonprofit legal services corporation that specializes in providing top-quality legal aid to indigent individuals and families throughout Northern California. I was first introduced to Buddhism at the age of 11 when my mother began to practice herself. We had immigrated from Puerto Rico to Boston, Massachusetts, 2 years before that, so that my mother could pursue a doctorate degree at Harvard University. She got her doctorate in education. She's a psychotherapist. As a single parent who had to work full-time and had a lot of financial struggles, I had to study and take care of 2 small children. My mother struggled a lot in those days. Once introduced to the practice of Buddhism, she quickly embraced it with her entire life, and little by little I began to see her change and her response to her, to her stresses change. On the other hand, I myself had a very negative take on the practice. As you saw this morning, we were chanting, and the first thing, as an 11-year-old, I remember was like, what are people doing babbling to a piece of paper? How is that ever going to help anybody? And I thought that I was convinced that the SGI was either some kind of weird cult or something, or just a collection of losers. I just thought it was really, really lame.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyways, and I really resented that my mom used to make me go to SGI meetings all the time, and I thought it was the biggest waste of time. Anyway, all this changed when I got to junior high school. I began 7th grade with a great momentum. I was very popular among my friends. My teachers loved me. In general, I was very excited about life. But by the middle of the school year, I let all my good fortune and all the good things that were happening to me sort of go to my head. And out of arrogance, I began to be just a jerk to everybody I knew. Needless to say, this turned a lot of people against me, and I lost a lot of my friends. I started. That's what made me start to chant. I myself am a fairly social person. I like being around people, and so especially at that age when you begin to become a social person, to be finding myself isolated was really, really difficult. So I started to chant. So at first I chanted for my friends to change. I was convinced that they were responsible for my problems. But as I got more and more into practice and began to study Buddhism and hear and really listen to people's experiences with practicing, I realized that I was the one who had to change. That the people around me were a reflection of my own approach to life. As I entered high school, and I struggled with, making friends and feeling lonely and confused and with self-confidence, with laziness, all these different things I was going through in my life. But because I kept chanting, little by little I saw myself changing. In Buddhism, we talk about the benefit of the practice coming in 2 different forms. One is as conspicuous benefits, something you chant about and you say, I want to change this in my life, or I want to pursue this dream, and then seeing that happen. And sometimes, and the bigger benefits is called inconspicuous, which is benefits that happen to you as you change over time. As you keep chanting, you see yourself becoming a different person, or you see the best parts of you emerging. So as I, kept chanting throughout high school, I saw myself become more confident, was able to sort of get along with people better, and just feel more secure about my future. SGI President Ikeda once said, this is what really kept me going in high school. When all is said and done, winning over yourself, personal triumph, is the only way forward. Rather than comparing your every joy and sorrow to that of others, you should aim to surpass your limits in the situation you currently find yourself in. So anyway, long story short, because of my practice, I feel like I was able to do really well in high school. And in the fall of 1993, I started going to Harvard University myself as an undergraduate. Unfortunately, when I started college, I stopped practicing Buddhism. I just basically felt like, the desire, all the things that kind of kept me going when I was in high school, all the sufferings I had, that made me chant, they were gone basically when I got to college, and so I didn't sort of see the need to chant anymore, or part of me just kind of got complacent, didn't really want to chant. Anyway, I was okay for a little bit, but little by little, Diana talked about life condition, from health to Buddhahood, and life condition is like your subjective response to your objective reality. So my life condition, I saw it go down more and more as I started to really actually not do really well in school. I had done really well in high school, and because of that, because I found things very easy, I never really developed the discipline that I would need in college to really do well. Things just came easy in high school. So I started to do really badly in school. I was finding that I was having a hard time also making friends again, which had been like this recurring problem. And also, because I went to Harvard, and so many students there were so, at least from my point of view, had so much going for them, and I felt like I didn't necessarily measure up. And I saw how much I really disliked myself as a gay man. I was starting to really come to terms with being gay and trying to deal with that, and all these things I internalized about being gay, about being a person of color, started to really come to the fore at this time. So I made it through the first year of college, but after the first week of my second year, I just got so overwhelmed with all these things coming up again that I just basically ended up dropping out of school for that semester. And I actually sank into this deep clinical depression. I was diagnosed with depression. I think I started taking medication on my 20th birthday, and I lost 30 pounds. I was just I was in real hell. So Buddhism, when you talk about earthly desires basically is like Diana was saying, it's a generic term for the attachments or the things that motivate you to do things in your life. Whether that is, in my case, for example, was wanting not to be so lonely, wanting to feel connection with people, or, wanting to do well in school, wanting to get good grades in school, wanting to feel that I measured up, that I wasn't, like some dumb guy. So anyways, that's what earthly desires means. And the way that, they become enlightenment is that they're your motivation to chant. And the more you chant, the more you understand the tendencies of your life and how your actions create certain patterns or certain results. And then you can then start changing those patterns, And I think for me, the most important application of this idea of earthly desires equals alignment is that, one thing that I read somewhere, I think that President Keita was saying, or somebody was saying an experience, was that because you're going to have attachments and desires anyway, the most important thing is what you attach yourself to, or what you make as your desire. So, so for example, if you make your desire, I want to develop myself as a human being. I want to become a better person. I want to, do a better job at work or whatever. Or, I want to discover a sense of mission. Then that's a great desire. That's a great way to use desires to move your life forward. And so that's what when I dropped out of school, I was really, really in the depths of hell and decided I need to chant again. And as I started to chant again, I started to see all these things in my life, how all these desires were sort of leading me, most of my desires were leading me in a negative direction, and how through chanting I could sort of see that and start moving myself in a different direction. Anyway, so I was able to go back to school, and the very first semester I was back, I was on medication for depression, like I said, and the medication I was on was really, really strong, and I couldn't. I just was really drowsy all the time. Plus, also, I started to do a lot of drugs too, just as a way to kind of cope with my life. So in the midst of smoking a lot of marijuana and doing all kinds of other things and drinking, I couldn't. And this medication, I couldn't do well in school. So I did it really badly last semester. But that semester also is when I received my own gohonzon, my own scroll, and I determined that I was going to become, even because I felt so crappy and so defeated, I determined that I was going to be the strongest person in the world. That I would be the Man of Steel. And so, and one area that I really wanted to do that was with my human relationships. Like I said, I still had a hard time making friends. So, over the next couple of years in school, I kept chanting about, I really want to change whatever I need to change to be able to relate to people better, to really feel like a part of something, part of a group, part of, a community. And so, right away, when you chant, you start seeing things about your life and your patterns that you've kind of gone. So one thing I saw is, I just remember one day somebody said something to me, and I remember in my mind thinking, God, that was so stupid that what you just said. And then I thought about it a little more, and I realized how much contempt I had for people in general. Even though I didn't realize that, a lot of my problems with getting along with people was how I unconsciously didn't like people in some ways, and I didn't realize that. Another time I was chanting one morning, and somebody came over, another friend of mine came over to chant with me, and we were talking, and I remember just feeling really this rage when we were talking. I didn't really understand why that was. And anyway, after we kind of parted and started chanting about this, I realized how much anger was a real part of my life, such a part of my life that was like I didn't realize it was part of my life. It was I was so entrenched in knee deep in it. Anyway, so experiences like that helped me see what it was that was causing me to not be able to get along with people, not to be able to have close friends. And so over the next few years, I changed that around. I had, by the time I finished college, I had lots and lots of really close friends that I still, 5 years later, we still talk all the time and hang out together and, keep up with each other. And what's even better for me is that, I find that now it's almost like I make friends too easily. Like I have too many people to keep up with, and it's kind of hard to like sort of be able to sort of maintain and keep alive on my different relationships that I really treasure. Anyway, so I just wanted to just share that little bit about my own experience, and that, again, for me, I feel like my experience with earthly desires is that I've learned to use them, not to negate anything, not to try to like run away from anything that I'm feeling, but to use that as motivation to chant. And so even, I think Dee was saying that she when she first found out about her illness, she started crying when she was chanting, in front of the gohonzon. And so, for myself, I really see that I can just chant as I am. I don't need to pretend that I'm enlightened or compassionate or whatever I'm feeling, I just chant that way. And then naturally, I just find that that emotion and that motivation, whatever it is, becomes a source of wisdom and compassion and creativity. So anyway, that's my experience.
So I'm sorry we're a little bit short on time, but I'd like to ask if anybody has a question or any thought that you want to share. Any question to ask me? Yes.
What does the chant mean?
Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I'll tell you what the kind of the literal translation of it is, but it's a lot deeper than simply the title of the Lotus Sutra. Nam is an honorific. Actually, the title of the Lotus Sutra is Myoho Renge Kyo. And Myoho is the mystic law. Renge is lotus, which represents the simultaneity of cause and effect, because the lotus flower blooms and seeds at the same time. And then Kyo is sutra, teachings, also described sometimes as sound vibration. So you're kind of devoting yourself to the law of cause and effect when you're chanting. And so the literal meaning of it is not nearly as deep as the actual practice of it, because it's an embodiment really of everything that there is in the Lotus Sutra, basically everything that there is in life. Myoho Renge Kyo has been described as the universal law of everything. There's Myoho Renge Kyo in everything. So when we're chanting that, I think the function for us as individual practitioners, and you may have different views, but I'll speak for myself, is really to activate the law in my life for positive, to bring out the best of me, the best in the people around me, to create value in my life. Soka Gakkai, the organization that we belong to, means Value Creation Society. And we're really working on trying to lead contributive lives, both for ourselves and for other people. So that's kind of a long answer for what Nam-myoho Renge Kyo means. Sure.
Why do you think chanting that gets you what you want? What do you think it is about the words or the phrase or whatever, the chanting of it, that causes you to get what you want?
You know, I heard something recently, it was at our last gay and lesbian conference, that really, really spoke to me. I think it's not, a lot of people, unfortunately, have the perception that we're saying that this is some magic incantation, which it is not. I think Linda Johnson, who is a vice women's leader for the United States, who spoke at our conference, said is that the reason we don't either, get the things that we need or we fulfill our dreams is never because of something that happens outside of us. Never. And that the external, putting cause to the external, including, the things that happen for ourselves in our lives, putting it outside of ourselves is antithetical to this Buddhism. So ultimately, what we're trying to do is become so, have such a high life condition that we ourselves basically attract that which we want. I don't know how to explain it any other way other than, there was an expression. Do you remember the television? It was a commercial on TV called "Sooner or Later You'll Own General Tires." Do you remember this? Am I the only one? It's actually a law of economics. If life is long enough, sooner or later you will own General Tires. But anyway, the idea is basically that if you continue to overcome your own internal obstacles to either having things that you need or being the kind of person that you want to be, you will get it. That there is the law of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is infinite and nothing is impossible. People have overcome cancer by really uprooting the cause of their suffering in their life when they shouldn't have. My partner overcame a brain tumor because her determination was so strong that it was not going to be true that she had a brain tumor. This is very, it's not magic. It's the way the world works. And I think that so many of us feel limited by our circumstances, especially, I'll speak for myself as a gay person. I feel very attacked oftentimes by my environment. The environment is very negative towards me. But my environment being negative towards me has never been the reason I couldn't do something. It was always because of me. It was always that I always have unlimited potential, and that by chanting I'm unlocking as much as I possibly can. I hope that explains it a little bit better. I think it's really hard for me to put it into words. So I can think about it.
Special in the sounds that's producing.
No, it's an actual activation of the universal law, basically. I don't know any. Do you have any other kind of way to express it?
Well, I just think one thing I can say is the way I think about it is that when in the same way in physics, when you think about the light spectrum, our eyes can only see a narrow part of it, and that our eyes are constructed for that narrow part of it. But there's a lot, there's like ultraviolet rays or like infrared or whatever. But they exist, but we just can't see it. That's the same thing with life. There's a lot more to life than we can perceive with our minds. So that I just know from my experience of chanting, when you chant, you sort of make that unknowable or mystical part of life your ally, and it helps you sort of be in rhythm, like Dee was saying. It helps you be at the right place at the right time, or really have the right insight you need to go on with life. And the characters in the Renge Kyo themselves, like I was saying, you can translate them into English, but each of them actually represents a deeper concept or lots of different concepts. And the phrase is like the relationship between those concepts to each other. And so there is something about the vibration of chanting that puts you in rhythm with sort of the universe. And even though, this is a theoretical explanation, but it's best, you can only understand when you do it yourself, basically. It's hard to put into words.
Can I just add a word for people who practice other kinds of Buddhism? Just maybe you might think of it as a key to unlocking everything that there is in Buddhism. I'm not saying it's the only key, but it is a key to unlocking everything that's there in all of the textual tradition, all of the practice tradition, across all of the three continents that Buddhism is at. So,
I think we're going to have to
Conclude? Great. If you have more questions, let's please ask out here. We conclude by saying Nam-myoho Renge Kyo 3 times, which is what I'd like to do. Thank you all for having us here. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.